All right, welcome to the Train Like a Pro podcast. Today, I'm really excited to have Turner Ward, World Series champion, Major League Baseball hitting coach for many years, with us today. Turner, thanks for coming, man.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start. If you could kind of give me a little bit of a backdrop. Some people may not know who you are or kind of like your career as a whole. Could you kind of go back a little bit, kind of give us some backdrop, and then we'll get into some baseball hitting stuff or whatever?
Yeah, man. Not to go too far back, but I went to my first major league game. I was about 10 years old. My dad took me, my older brother, and my younger brother to go watch Hank Aaron play at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. And Hank Aaron was closing in on that home run record, and so it was the only major league game that I'd ever seen before I made it to the major league. So I can remember that moment. Every time Hank Aaron would take a swing, the whole stadium, the flashes, every swing that he took. Well, my dad had us out in left field, had us spread out, it was 9, 10, 7, and we was all spread out in left field. But I could just remember him hitting that homer and that ball sailing out into to left field. In the stands, and I know probably everybody thinks we caught one of those balls, but we didn't.
Now that would be a good end to that story.
But what I caught was like a dream. I was like, man, that's what I want to do. So fast forward, 1992, we was playing the Atlanta Braves in the World Series. Deion Sanders, me and him's talking out there in left field, and it's like it was like an epiphany at that moment. It's like, wow, I saw myself, up there in those seats. But that's where my dream started. The Yankees, I was in college. I went to junior college for 2 years and then went to the University of South Alabama, where the Yankees started talking to me about, we're going to draft me. What would it take to sign you and that kind of stuff. I was like, man, if they only knew it'd take nothing. So they ended up drafting me in the 18th round and out of college. And I remember when they called me on the phone that day, it was just me and my mom in the kitchen. And Jack Gillis, a Yankee scout, called, hey, Turner, we drafted you in the 18th round, and, this is what we got. We want to sign you. I said, well, I can't sign for that. I did tell him I needed a new car. Didn't have a car, and I wanted my college paid for. So they said, well, we can't do that. And so I got off the phone, and I got with my mom. I was like, God, I just told the New York Yankees no, when I know I would have signed for nothing. So I went to go see my buddy, his dad owned a used car dealership. And so I went up there and talked to him. I said, man, I just told the Yankees no. And I said, here's my dream. And, I guess my mom gave him the number of where I was going to be. And that scout called me up there, and I ended up agreeing to the contract right there at Little's Auto Sales. So I told everybody, if they need a good, clean, used car or a major league contract, you go to Little's. But that's kind of where it started for me, man. And I was with the Yankees for 3 years, and then getting traded to Cleveland, made it to the big leagues with them. There for a couple of seasons, and traded to Toronto Blue Jays, where we won the World Series in 1992 and 1993. From there, Milwaukee Brewers, another 3 years, and then to the Pittsburgh Pirates, Arizona Diamondbacks. Got to play in the playoffs with those guys, and hit a homer in the playoffs against the Mets in 99. But 2000, and then 2001 was my last year with the Phillies. So that was really my last year playing was 2001.
Okay. And then did you jump right into coaching or no?
No, I had some good advice to sit out a year, and which I did. My pastor at my church asked me if I would lead the youth group. Our youth pastor was going to go to another church and be a lead pastor, and I said, well, yeah, I'll be glad to. I'll do it until we find a new youth pastor. Well, that was 3 years later. I'm still a youth pastor, and they actually a youth pastor came, and another church up the street when I left that position for the new youth pastor to come in. Another church asked me to do it, and so I did that, and they had 2 services, a really large youth group. So I did that, and during that time, it was like from 1 week to the next. When that ended, Doug Strange called me. I don't know if you remember that name. He played in the big league some, but he was with the Pirates. and asked me if I wanted to manage their rookie ball team in Florida. And I said, man, I don't know if I can. I hadn't even talked to my wife about something like this, and this is like year 4 now being at home. And so I talked to her. She goes, I know you would love to do it. My youngest son, or my oldest son, said, come on, Dad, you want to. And so I was like, all right. So I did it. So I did that, 2005. And then, for the next, I don't know, however many years now, 20 plus years coaching and 16 years playing. So,
wow.
Been in the game for like over 35 years now.
How old was your oldest son when you took that first one?
So he was 10 years old when I finished playing in 2001.
Okay.
So about that time, he was around 14. So he was a teenager. He knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So we had our youngest child, 2001, my last year. She was born in January in 2000. So I played that 1 year, while she was a little infant.
Wow, that's cool. So then this past year, you finished up with the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. Okay. And obviously, the season probably didn't go as well as you would have hoped as far as offensively. Could you pinpoint, looking back at, I'm sure you've done some evaluation, just kind of looking, what could we have done? Can you pinpoint something that caused that?
I don't know if you can ever really kind of go to the cause. You look at, some of our great players that was there, Arenado and Goldschmidt. I mean, both of those guys, just 2 years before, Goldie was the MVP. And Arenado was third MVP, but it was him, then Machado, and then Arenado. Things just went together, things just clicked. I think we had a lot of young guys and trying to make adjustments in the big leagues. That was a big thing. Mason Williams, the shortstop, he had a really good rookie season. Donovan Gorman, the league figured him out. That was tough on him. Newt Barr had a lot of injuries, back and forth, hurt back, and I'm not going to put any kind of. I think sometimes it's just baseball. Sometimes just things just don't work out and things don't go like they should, and as it in my position, you get none of the credit when things are going good, and you get all the blame when things go bad. Yeah. So I signed up for that.
What would you say, because I've always thought about this. I mean, these guys are big league hitters. Obviously, they have great knowledge of how to swing, mechanics. They've gotten there, right? What is the role, kind of the primary role for a hitting coach at the big league level? Is it more mechanical? Is it more approach, mental? I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit of all of that, but like, if you were to kind of narrow it down, hey, my primary goal would be this as a big league hitting coach for players. I mean, what would you say?
Well, number one is understanding how they move and what they do really well, and trying to maintain that. But in the course of a season, you're going to lose your legs. You're going to lose, your tempo, your rhythm. But when I talk about hitting, it is 100% mental, 100% physical. Mm. So I say mental first because I always ask, like, what are you thinking? Because to me, that's can be a key component to kind of how the body's moving. Oh, I don't want to get beat by a fastball, or I don't want to swing at his slide, or those mental cues that get grown men and kids into a bad place. So I think from a psychological standpoint, mental standpoint, number one, but the physical is just as important. That's why I say it's 100% mental and 100% physical.
Would you say, percentage-wise, when you're talking with players, do you end up talking more mental or more physical, or is it pretty much split? I know you were saying 100%, 100%, but as far as what you're addressing mostly, would you say it leans one way or the other, or is it still pretty split?
I think it's understanding which one you got to go to. I still think it's a pretty good even split. Is there, they start hitting the ball well and they're making outs, and then all of a sudden it's like there's something wrong. No, nothing's wrong. We do want to hit the ball hard, you know. So I mean, those in-game conversations and the mental conversations that goes on is way more mental than physical. Yeah. Now pre-game could be more physical than mental, but and then game planning, of course, that's all mental. Right. So all of that is intertwined, and all of it's valuable. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Can you pull up that one video? You already got it. Look at you. You're so fast. So I'm curious. This is an old video of you with the Dodgers. Do you remember what you were talking about here? Someone got a little glimpse of
looks like some hitting talk going back and forth.
This is Andre Ethier. Okay, so he knows hitting.
Yeah.
He loves hitting. And, for me, he was a left-handed thrower, so he's talking about his top hand, is what he's talking about at that point. So, that space or that separation is kind of where we're talking about. And I know the way he's talking about when the hands get so high, the swing gets so steep, So that's why he's kind of going up here. He's talking about, up here compared to here. And I think that, for some guys, there's a comfort level of hands being high and going into the slot. Some guys, there's lower, like a Justin Turner who likes his hands low, and they climb to the slot and turn. So, that's where I think the individuality of the person in the game and what you're able to do with it becomes the most important thing. That's why, for me, it's understanding what they do really well and why.
Yeah, no, that actually was something I was going to ask you about is how important, and you kind of already answered it, but how important is individuality with giving hitting instruction versus, kind of, I don't know, for lack of better terms, cookie cutting hitters during hitting instruction. I mean, how important do you think that individuality is?
Well, at our level, of course, there's no cookie cutting, because every one of them thinks their swing is the most unique one in the world. And really, it is. The DNA is so vital. When I'm talking about the DNA, I'm talking from the mindset to the actual cells of the body and how quick it moves or slow or how long the limbs are or how wide the base is. I mean, that individuality of the setup position compared to the forward move is so individual that you can compare guys, and I do still compare guys. I love comparing Nolan Gorman to Jim Thome. It was just a really good right-handed thrower, left-handed hitter, not quick hips, but so there's things, there's history can show us some things too, but the individuality of getting in the box, it is just you and him and the pitcher. And so the individuality of the setup and the movement is just as well.
Do you think that translates also down to younger players as well? Or do you feel like with younger players, it's okay to be so uniform across all? Or do you think that individuality starts and kind of forms at a young age, and then as you get older, you still work within that? Does my question kind of make sense? Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. So I'll go back to Gorman again.
Yeah.
It's been a topic, but, I wanted to look at his swings in high school because he won the perfect game home run stuff. But going even beyond that, I asked Gorman to let me see some video of when you was 12.
Really?
Yeah. So I was like,
wow.
This is what you do organically really well. I would never want to take away. I just would want to add to what they do really well organically. I'm not going to say there's not major adjustments because sometimes there are. Yeah. But I literally just 2 weeks ago with my own son, he just turned 20. And, he struggled the second part of the fall, did really well in the early part. And I said, one thing you need to learn to do is like study and look at other hitters. I can sit here and tell you things, but there's some things that you need to educate yourself. And because you're your own individual person, and he does some things organically really well. But even the best, and at the best, Manny Machado, when I had him in L.A., those moves can get out of sync, get out of whack, tempo, all those kind of things. So, it really is so individual that, you have to, as a coach, only focus on that part.
That's so good. I think going back to when you say when he was 12 years old is amazing. I've never heard anyone say that, but it makes so much sense. I was talking with someone else, another big league hitting coach, and he was, I think I asked him the same question. It's kind of like, what are you doing? Is it mechanical? Is it mental? And he described his role as, my role is to know what their swing looks like when they're swinging their best. So that way it's a long season. So they get out of that, and to know that they're out of it, and then how to get them back to that swing. It's not always necessarily, hey, we're going to be working on this mechanical thing today. If they're swinging great, we're not like making changes. They're big league hitters, right? But trying to know what they are at their best. And that kind of sounds like what you're talking about is like kind of going back, okay, when you were young, successful. Let's see how your body moves. Let's work within that. And then, yes, there's always refinement, right? Here or there. We could tweak this. We can get a little extra pop this way, or maybe we could stay through the ball a little bit better, going the other way, whatever it may be, but not really changing from that overall swing that God gave them that they've worked on since they were probably young.
Exactly.
Is that fair?
It is, because the challenge is as they get to the better pitching, the more efficient the swing needs to be, and that efficiency means maybe my hands just got to be closer to the slot. Maybe my stride length needs to be a little bit shorter. Maybe my tilt. I've got maybe I'm getting too much tilt and I'm in and out of zone too much. So knowing those things, because the kinetic chain is never going to change from the ground up. So every hitting coach should be from the ground up anyway.
Yeah. Would you say hitting mechanics have changed over the years from back when you played to now, or are they still efficient, quality mechanical swing is the same as it was back when you were playing, for example?
No doubt it's the same. It's just new terms, right? Okay. It's just like we don't use we didn't never use the term exit velocity, right? We just said, man, that ball's hitting hard, so we didn't have to put a number on it, you know. And actually, I still don't even know how accurate the numbers are because I watch stuff. It's like even the arms that are throwing today. So I've been in the game long enough that there was the Jugs gun, okay? And then there was the Ray gun. And now, the StatCast, where they're getting it right out of the hand.
Out of the hand.
So when I was way back, they was getting those velos at home plate. Okay, so the very first time this year, they had it where it was released out of the hand and home plate. There was 3 to 4 miles an hour difference.
Wow.
Okay, so those guys that were 88, 90 were 92, 94. Those guys that was 92, 94 back when I played, there was 96, 98. So you put guys like Rob Nin or Randy Johnson out there, they was throwing 98 to 100. Well, they was topping out just like some of the top relievers, then. So there are more hard throwers now, but they were still throwing just as hard.
Yeah. I had that conversation with someone the other day too. They were asking her I don't know about the guns. I said, well, yeah. And I explained that exact thing to them. But I said, I still think the percentage, there's way more of the guys throwing Randy Johnson or Pedro or like some of these other guys, that's why they stood out so much is because how hard they're throwing. Now it feels like every team has 3 of them, or 4 of them or whatever, which is amazing. And I'm not sure, what do you think that's accredited to? Do you think it's just better training? It's just
no training. I mean, even like as I played, watching the game evolve and the fast and the power, guys learn to train more and be more explosive. And I think, heck, in the early days, it was taboo to even lift weights.
To lift, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was. So we're going back a lot of years, but still, as you train and develop, you can't help but get stronger.
Yeah.
So the players they're stronger, more athletic.
Do you think that's why there's also more like arm injuries now than there were back then? I mean, and maybe we didn't have the data back then, but I guess I don't remember hearing about all the arm injuries back then as much as I do now.
I've never heard as young as I see them getting hurt now. And more often, it's like you can go through a season and say, or a career of a person who doesn't get hurt.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so it's like, I'd like to see who doesn't get hurt in a 3 to 4 year span, because that would be a greater percentage or less percentage of people that you would be able to see. You go, oh my gosh, he didn't get hurt in 3 years.
Yeah.
Or his arm, he didn't lose time on the DL in 3 years. I mean, that would be something to see.
It's like, where's the balance of that, right? Because I'm sure that obviously these guys are getting stronger, they're throwing harder, they're hitting the ball farther because of all this training, but then it enables them to have a higher risk of these injuries. It's like, kind of as a young player coming up, it's like you want to stand out, but also if you get hurt, it could affect, could derail your career, especially if you get hurt at a real young age. Yeah. It's like, I mean, with your son, did you allow him as he was growing up all the way through? Were you having him lift? Were you having him do all that?
Well, I mean, to a point, yeah. But even my oldest son, who was more of a pitcher, I didn't let him throw a breaking ball until he was like 16.
I love that.
So I wanted him just to develop, a fastball, and he had a really good fastball in high school. He played a little bit of minor league baseball. So do I think he maybe could have got a little bit more? Maybe go to a farm or something? Probably could, yeah. But would it blown him out earlier? Or I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think it's always when you're pushing your body to the limits like that. There's always the risk,
Right, sure.
But there's a reward too.
Right. Did your son ever push back on that when? Because I'm assuming every pitcher wants to throw the curveball and strike kids out. Did he ever push back? Was he upset that you didn't?
But it was almost like common, for him. I started at such a young age.
Yeah.
So he could throw a change up. I mean, It wasn't no big deal. He could throw a 3-fingered. But as far as spin, I just waited until he was 16.
Yeah. No, I didn't start throwing a curveball until I was 16 as well. My dad did the same thing with me, and it was because there was a scout with the Mets at the time that my dad had a great relationship with, and the way he explained it, again, I don't know. I'm sure some stats could make this not true, I guess, but this is how it was explained to me, is that when someone develops a good fastball at a young age, obviously fastball, changeup, a similar release point, right? You can learn those two pitches. Changeups take longer to develop than necessarily a curveball. Curveball you can develop pretty quickly, and a pretty good one quickly. So what he would see over the years of his scouting, he'd been scouting for like 40 years. He said, I'd see a sophomore, fastball, 85, consistently good run, great breaking ball, decent changeup. I'd be okay. I'll see you next year. I'm gonna come back junior year. Fastball 85, good breaking ball, good changeup. Senior year, the development, in his opinion, development stopped because, and then he broke it down this way, is when someone has a good curveball, they use it often, right? And the only way to strengthen your arm, what he would say is by this action, right? And so if you add up all these throws where you're not doing this action, when if you were throwing a fastball or a changeup, again, this is his opinion, that his fastball would plateau early. He would see the guys that threw lots of curveballs early, their fastballs would plateau early. And they wouldn't get to the velocity that you would expect them to do as a scout, seeing them at a young age and seeing them develop. And I always thought that was a pretty valid point. And it wasn't the angle of like, well, you're going to hurt your arm. And then the other argument he always used to say was, I could teach you how to hit right, because throwing a curveball right, okay, yeah, you're not going to hurt your arm. But I teach you how to hit right. Do you swing right every single time? It's like, well, no. It's like, but you don't have a risk of necessarily injuring yourself if you don't swing right. But with a curveball, potentially you do. And I always thought that was good. So that was my dad was like, no, you ain't throwing a curveball till you're 16. so that was the reason he gave me.
No, that's a good reason.
Do you think that actually, pull up the next video? I want to get his opinion on this video because, baseball, a lot of, I guess, old timer baseball guys, talk about how the game has changed, right? They always talk about how the game has changed, and it has changed. Actually, rules have changed. I mean, we know a lot, but just as far as like the players, the mentality of the players have changed, and different things like this. And I don't know if you saw this video of Joe Madden talking about this, and I'd be just curious to get your feedback and your opinion on this as well.
I think I did. I'm just seeing that clip without hearing it. I think I did.
Have you seen this before?
I believe everybody wants to be like everybody else in today's world, in today's game. I really believe in the individuality of the group. I think part of the problem is that the game's not being passed down from generation to generation right now by actually former players or former coaches, guys that have been there, done that, guys that are proven great instructors, teachers. A lot of the coaches these days are coming from places, Driveline and things of that nature. These are today's gurus. I'm here to tell you, man, if I'm starting a group tomorrow, definitely got Larry Bow in that group. Absolutely. I don't care how old Larry Bow is. We need people to pass the game down, to have it played properly. Guys have to be told when they're screwing up, doing things wrong. I think you could watch a lot of games today, and I keep getting queried about, did you see how sloppy the play was? Now, listen, you could have sloppy play with the best instructors in the world. I'm not arguing that. But the game has devolved into the point where everybody's after their own brand and a show me kind of a thing, as opposed to playing this team concept that's individualized by the Dodgers or the Cardinals or the Pirates of the past, which I loved. And I thought the Angels in the 90s and early 2000s, we had an identity. I thought the Rays, when we got to the Rays, we established an identity. Those are the kind of things that's never talked about anymore. It's all based on analytical data and a sameness. Everybody wants sameness when it comes down to draft. And furthermore, there are no minor leagues anymore. That's been so watered down. I'm here to tell you, man, under these circumstances, I'd never get an opportunity to eventually do what I did, because I would have never been placed in a minor league system for the period of time to get the kind of experience I needed to establish becoming a coach, manager, et cetera. So none of that stuff's ever discussed, but that to me, that bothers me. I mean,
you could stop it there. That's kind of the gist of it. What's kind of your feedback on what he just said?
I mean, I can agree to stuff. Some of it, of course, is just personal opinion, but
Sure.
Just from the coaching standpoint, one thing that I've noticed, because coaching can be good no matter where you come from. I'm not going to discredit anybody from like that. But what can't do is sometimes is the respect of been there, done that. And I don't want to take away from say, oh, just because I've been there, done that, I can teach at a grade level. That I don't mean that at all. What I mean is like when you want to say something to a veteran player, you better be able to kind of have something, to kind of back that up. So I look at myself as a coach, as a dad. I call my sons out. Probably not as hard as probably I needed to if they had a tough coach, but I look at as players know that I'm going to be brutally honest, and whether they like that truth or not, they're going to get it. And I think that sometimes when you don't have the experience of something like that, maybe you're just trying to fit in, or you're just trying to appease, and you're not willing to say the tough things. And I think that's what I needed as a coach from a guy like Buck Showalter. I needed that from Phil Gardner. I needed that from Cito Gaston. And so for me, even some of the times I didn't like those guys, I love what they did for me. Yeah. And so I wanted to be a coach that was willing to say the tough things and sometimes be able to maybe accept some of the how do I put it? The not so good feeling of when it comes back at you. But I'll give you an example with Nato. I don't think I've ever been as hard on a player last year, not just this past season. I was the year before, and other than Yasiel Puig, and I was like, I said, I'm gonna lose this guy. I'm challenging him so hard. I'm so hard on him. And we were in Toronto this year, and he thanked me. Really? I was like, man, I thought I would never hear those words. And so that I'll get emotional about it because I care enough to say the tough things. And I think that's what Joe's trying to say, man. It's like, can you say the tough things to these guys? Because, man, nobody on this earth can elevate themselves to the highest level without people challenging them. Mm-hmm. I need people to challenge me. You need people to challenge them. The greatest players in the world need someone to challenge them. And I think that's the hard part about coaching, because you have to be able to say the tough things.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's so, and I think that goes beyond even baseball too, right? I know for my own personal life, some of my best friends are the ones that are willing to challenge me if they see something that's not lining up with whatever my life or whatever it may be. They feel comfortable enough to speak into my life and call me out on the things that I need to be called out on. And because of that relationship that we've built over time, but they're doing it because they care about me.
Exactly.
Right. So and I think what an incredible moment for him to say thank you, especially if you hadn't heard that from him all the way coming up to kind of realize that, man, he knows I care about him. That's probably what that means to
exactly. You. And that's kind of part of my philosophy. I stole my philosophy from a couple of really good dudes. John Wooden, he says, a player won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I stole that one from when I got into coaching, and I can literally, I can understand that from the coaches like my college coach, Coach Kittrell, Coach Larker, Buck Showalter. Their DNA actually kind of came into me. It's like I wanted them a part of who I was as a coach. Mm-hmm. So, and the other one was from Jesus. In Luke 6:40, Jesus said, he goes, a disciple is not above his teacher, but when fully trained, he will become like his teacher. Okay, so I turn it into baseball terms. Yeah. A player is not above his coach, but when he's fully trained, he will become like his coach. So I know this. Coach Kittrell, I just got to speak at one of his classes. He's teaching college. He was probably one of the most influential persons in my life. I'm able to say that he impacted me in a way. He lives within me. Just like Christ lives within us. He is a mentor, teacher, coach for us, I want to be that mentor, teacher, coach for the players. So it's important to me. It's a philosophy. You have to be willing to, to stand on something that's so solid that you're willing to be fired for. And those are two things that I'm willing to be fired for.
Yeah, and that's something. What good advice for any level. Any level coaching. This is not just
it works everywhere.
Yeah, I was saying what you just said is good if you're coaching the little league team, volunteer coaching, getting paid to coach some travel team, or at the big league level. It's all relationship based,
yes.
Right? I mean, that's the best coaches are relationship builders, I would imagine.
Exactly.
Right? But you mentioned Buck Showalter, and I wanted to ask you, like, what was that experience like with Buck? Was that earlier in his managerial career?
Yeah, because I got drafted right out of college, went to Oneonta, New York, and Buck Showalter was my manager my first year in pro ball. And he called me out on a couple of things. And the next year in A-ball, we only lost 18 games that half season.
Oh, wow.
It was like a great team. The next year, Fort Lauderdale, we won it, the Florida State League. And, man, I was a fiery type player. I mean, I was, I played hard and expected a lot. And I remember I made an out one time, and I remember I shouldn't say the last time, but the second to last time I ever threw a helmet, because I did it in A-ball and I did it in the big leagues once. But I threw my helmet, and it hit a hop skip towards the dugout, hit him right between the legs. So that was really, really the last time I threw one in the intent of very much frustration. So he grabbed me up. I'm taller than Buck, and he grabbed me up like this and thought I was going to be released.
That helmet was probably bouncing in slow motion for you.
Oh, it was. I was like, oh, here.
Oh, no. The worst. That's so funny. I agree with what you said on your opinion of that too. I think that, I think back on it, although he did play professional baseball, but like one of the best managers, like a Jim Leland, didn't really have a successful playing career necessarily. And I think he's talked about this a lot too. And, but a phenomenal coach, right? So he didn't have to play in the big leagues for 20 years in order to get the respect from. I mean, he's up there next to Barry Bonds. I mean, that you ever seen that video of him just like laying into Barry Bonds, and but phenomenal coach and relationship. He was my father's first manager. He has similar thing to Buck Showalter. My dad's first year playing pro ball was Jim Leland's first year managing.
Oh wow!
And with the Tigers organization, and even back then, my dad always talks about how it was relationship building, and he was one of the best at just knowing every single guy in that team and just kind of building the relationship so he could, because he was hard on his guys, but so he could be hard on his guys, and he received it well because of those relationships. So I think that's so true. What about the game as far as becoming? Is there a practical example you could tell me that how the game has become more analytical? You hear about this people talk about this all the time. The game baseball has become so analytical. What does that even mean? And is there a practical example of that, or do you not even agree with that?
I think it's something that if we never had, we would have never needed. If that doesn't make sense, because even exit velocities, I mean, that's great to see it in the launch angles and stuff, but if we never ever even saw that, we would still know we hit it hard and that this angle line drive still a hit. So from a very simplicity standpoint, that would do. But there's other things that's kind of it's helped. Just knowing the numbers. Sometimes the eyes can be tricky. You can't see everything. So knowing how they struggle off a slider or a changeup or a breaking ball, and have the numbers on that, or when they're not getting to the velocity that that they normally would have. To me, there's just, there's other ways, there's good use. So I think hitters, that there was never hitting coaches. I've been a hitting coach for a lot of years. There was never a hitting coach ever again. I think hitters would figure it out. I think they have to, just like pitching, they got to figure it out. It's like the game tells you something. The pitchers are literally telling you what you need to work on. I still use that. So, no, I don't want to discredit any of the numbers. I just know if we never have them, we would never needed them.
You think overall they're a net positive though, or would you say it's just it's Like, is it just how you use the numbers, basically, how
Yeah,
you
I think
interpret them, and then how you use
dumb
them?
down, or how you use them. Some guys, I mean, a lot of these hitters now, they grow up in labs, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of all they know. That's the most norm thing.
Do you think analytics part of hitting specifically takes away some of the hitter's feel? One of the things, again, I go back to my father, but grew up in a different generation. I'm kind of like the hybrid. I would say, as I was young, it was kind of becoming more of a thing. But he always said, one, he never had a hitting lesson until he played pro ball. And he said if he struggled, he would just go to a cage and hit until he felt right. And so knowing his own swing by just swinging, right, and figuring it out, kind of like you're saying, if we didn't have it, you think they'd figure it out. Do you think that with analytics sometimes that hitters rely on it too much? It's like they get out, the first thing they may do is go look at the iPad, what did I do here versus what did I feel? What did I, is that a thing, or am I making that up?
Oh, Freddie Freeman would love this conversation right now, because Freddie is kind of that feel guy, right? And a lot of guys, there is the feel in the
He's
real.
Pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, there is a feel and real to the game, It's like guys want to feel, man, I want to feel like I'm on top of that ball going downhill. Well, their literal swing is not that. That is a feel. So the feel can be different than the real. And I think that, I want my own son. I can just about use any type of analytical thing to do, but I want to dumb it down as much as I can, because when he gets in that box, he can't be thinking about nothing but competing. All that other stuff going into the cage is very important, and trying to get to that feel. But you got to go out there and compete without even feeling good.
Right.
So how can you do that? When can you do that? To me, that's what makes a hitter.
Right.
There's hitting, and then there's mechanics. Have good mechanics, be a good hitter. Okay, that's a place that we'd all want to be.
Right. Yeah, and it's would you say almost like the analytics almost is more of a tangible evidence of what should be a tangible evidence of what you're feeling. So it's like, hey, I felt this way. Let me check. Oh yeah, okay, I saw whatever. My exit velocity wasn't there on that because I felt this X, Y, Z, and now I can. Let me make that change now because it's kind of proven that this is what happened, and kind of use it that way.
Well, think about this from this standpoint, because a lot of the front office people are not baseball people anymore, right?
Yeah.
So when an analytical guy can woo them with the numbers and what they're going to come and bring, it's like, oh, that's a new thing. Hitting is so different than pitching. It's like you're not just going to go up there and get, I'm going to get my shape and turn it and, kind of get on top. There's different ways to manipulate the arm angles and all this kind of stuff. Well, a hitter is at the mercy of all shapes and speeds. And so he has to be in a good position. And so that's why anybody can be a hitting coach, really. Learn to swing, watch a lot of video, know the numbers, and go out there and just teach relate. So, I don't mean to just dumb it down that much, but literally that's why guys can do this, because you're just looking at a video when it's good, or watching the greatest hitters in the game and hope someone can try to emulate that. Right. So to be a hitting coach or a video analyst, that's kind of what a lot of guys do. Oh, it's just analyzing video. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, anybody can do it, okay? It's like a Geico commercial.
Why don't you pull up the next video, because I want to ask him about this.
We talk about swinging down the back, but as we do that with our hands, our torso does this. Our torso is becoming a merry-go-round. There's a down to the merry-go-round, and there's also to the Ferris wheel. There's also an up. This move here, over here is the down, over here is the up. Okay, so when you're in your stance and you're 3D loading, you want to make sure that you do that. And when you do that, when you tilt, this knob comes up. Now, when I do that, I want you to see where the barrel is. My knob went up toward my nose, but this barrel is darn near at my knee. I can hit a low pitch with the knob going up. Okay? And so many players are doing this, and this is costing them time and distance. It's not as quick a move, and the barrel doesn't get to the zone until here, where this aggressive tilt move gets the barrel into the zone right there. Okay?
So I've been seeing a lot more of this, even just coaches, be social media, teaching this way. I guess I've always wanted to sit down with the hitting coach and just kind of ask them their opinion on I guess that thought process. I'm sure are you familiar with it? Okay, so I've just always wanted to ask someone about it. So that's why I brought it up. I want to get your opinion, I guess, on that approach.
I think everybody's, I think hitting coach kind of has their one thing that they want to implement and to just kind of drive home. See, I can't live in that world. I can't have a guy trying to get a feel of doing that and him losing his barrel, dumping his barrel. And yeah, that low pitch is there and he can't, he's in and out of the zone. I mean, so that one thing could be good. I mean, I see Judge kind of in his move, he does have a very similar. Staying locked in on his backside, his forward move does not go much. He just kind of leg strides out and he sticks on his backside. But I guarantee you, even Judge, when he does that, he can get stuck. There's always an equal opposite. You notice how he said there's a tilt down and a tilt up? Well, of course. If your body tilts, there's a down and there's a up. There is an equal opposite in everything that we do. Equally opposite, good, evil, hot, cold, dark, light. So my bicep, when it contracts, my tricep, I mean, every part of my body is just doing an equal opposite move. So the good can become the bad. So I don't want to contradict anything he says, but if I try to get 12 guys to do that, then I'm going to lose 11 of them.
Yeah.
Or 99 out of 100. I'm not going to say that couldn't be from a drill standpoint or even from a thought process standpoint.
The feel versus real thing that we were talking about.
Exactly, the feel versus real. But you see when he does quick and that barrel, I know for a fact that if that barrel gets below too early, too soon, you're not flat and your bat's not staying in the zone long enough. So I can, from video analysis, I can prove that.
Yeah.
But great hitters can get away with a lot of things. Great hand-eye coordinating guys can do a lot of things to make contact and manipulate the ball. Yeah. So, but from just a pure kind of just the normal kinetic swing, I would want to be, of course, more balanced. I look at it in three phases, and if I just had to dumb it down to the three things, it would be down, which is getting to the low, getting to a hinge, forward, which would be my stride, and stop is when I do hit the ground, then I'm going to rotate with as much hitting against that wall right there. So a down forward stop would be my, in general, 3-point, and then I would use that in multiple different layers of ways how I would help a kid or talk to a player.
Yeah, no, that's good. So it almost like, correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost like the exception doesn't always prove the rule necessarily on maybe that hitting approach. Some guys can be successful with it for sure. I agree. I actually think, I know he works with Judge and stuff like that, but it does seem like Judge does a lot of what he's saying.
Yeah.
But
see, like I'll give you an example between the polar opposites, Goldie to Arenado. I mean, Goldie is lower half. I don't never want to think about my hands. Don't want to think about them. Nado, it's like, no man, I want to make sure my hands, my lower half's good. When I'm seeing them go bad, and this upper half with Goldie and this lower half with Nado. So one doesn't want to talk about the other. One doesn't want to, think the other's important. I mean, and they know it's important.
Right.
Okay, they all know it's important. But watching where those two went south this year, it was like Goldie, kinetic chain, and kind of going back to no, I don't even want to talk about that. But it's how guys can just be polar opposites.
Yeah.
And you have to train different ways to try to bring out something.
Going back to the not cookie cutting.
Yes.
Right. Basically going back to looking at the individual, seeing what they need, seeing what, maybe someone who has a real steep path, maybe a thought process like this would be helpful to, right. But if someone has a huge loft in their swing, maybe this would be more problematic for them if they're thinking of that, something like that, just kind of taking each individual and working with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I think let me talk a little bit about, I want your opinion. So you play with the Blue Jays, you win 2 World Series championships, which must have been incredible, being on those teams. One, the Joe Carter one, right? You were on. What was that like, first of all, when that ball sails over the fence? I mean, give me from your perspective.
Well, we're all at home plate, and I'm thinking, cha-ching! Here I'm a young player, and about to get a full share of the World Series and play any, But that World Series bought me and my wife and my son was born that year, 1992. So he was born in May. We called him the World Series baby.
Oh.
So we bought a house that winter. And that was a major part of us, kind of getting our first home.
Yeah, that's awesome. Could have bought a lot of Bitcoin. Now, you didn't get a lot of playing time, obviously, on those teams. Those teams were stacked. From Ricky Henderson. Who else were some of those guys on the team? And that
Dave Winfield.
Paul
Molitor came out. John O'Rood, Ed Sprague, Pat Borders was catching.
So you
Roberto Alomar. Devon White.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So obviously you were a young player. You were just coming up. You weren't getting the playing time. How difficult was that difficult for you to not get the playing time? Or because you guys were being so successful and you knew those guys that were there, it wasn't as tough on you? Or as a competitor, it was still really difficult?
It was super tough. Your goal was to get to the big leagues, and everything, but that's short-lived. Your goal, you want to play.
Right.
You're a competitor, and you want to be in that lineup, and you want to. So it was tough, but I, trying to make the best of. I don't want to say a bad situation because I learned so much. Man, that team was so good at getting tips, and I learned so much about pitchers tipping pitches and giving pitches from second base to the hitter, and the reason we won those World Series, we was such a good collective group, and even as a young player, you was expected to be able to give those things. So you had to be able to. I had to be able to help Joe Carter. If I was behind him and as I was second base or whatever that was, you had to be a part of it. It was expected to win a World Series. And going back to even 91, where we got to the playoffs, but we didn't win the World Series, then them winning the next 2. It was a team of guys that was collectively doing things to help each other to win a championship.
Yeah. So how did that affect? So you say it was difficult. Like how did you work through that? What advice? Because that happens a lot with college. I always see, I've seen a lot of young kids, the star of every team in their high school, travel team, whatever it may be, they go to college, no longer are they the number one guy. They got to maybe sit freshman year or get little playing time here or there. And it's like their world crashes down. And it's very difficult for them to even just work through that. Obviously it happened to you at the highest level, but what advice would you give for, a young player maybe going through those growing pains of not necessarily being on the field, when they want to, they believe they can contribute to the team, but they're not getting that opportunity for whatever reason. What advice would you give for that kid?
Well, I still have to do this every single year with guys. From Burleson this year, who wasn't starting, who didn't think he was going to make the team out of spring training, to Brendan Donovan, to make the adjustments that he has. But and I know this is going to sound silly, but I just a word that I use because I get brutally honest with the guys. You're not good enough to be right in it, to make this lineup or whatever. You have to challenge them in a certain way. And a lot of times I say, hey man, you just got to get gooder. And I say that simplifying things, but literally, I'll even go back to Goldschmidt in his second year. He asked me a question, what I need to do to get better. He's probably asked more questions than any player I've ever been around. I mean, he is the most coachable. Matter of fact, he's the player that I have to be real careful to coach, because he would literally do whatever you ask. Oh, what have I got to lose? Let me try this. Go up there and take till you get 2 strikes because you're not seeing them all. Okay, I mean, whatever I challenged him with, he did it. But kind of going back to your question, the point is like, how bad do you want it? What are you sacrificing? You know, when everybody else is on the, done with practice, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing to make yourself better? You know, and I use, what are you going to do to get gooder? You know, so in other words, it's like even with Donovan's challenging him to sitting on pitches or to learn to get to the pitch inside better by training a certain way to be able to do that. And because if you're going to, expand your skill, it's going to take doing something maybe you've never done. And I use this word all the time, this statement: do not let never stop you from getting better. Because people will say, well, I've never done that. I've never tried that. Oh, I don't know if I can do that. Well, don't let never, because never is going to come. And so never is going to put you in a place of a decision. So don't let never stop you from getting better. Oh, I've never had to work that long. Oh, I've never had to work that hard. Oh, I've always been able to hit a fastball. What's going on? So you got to be a really good scout of yourself, and you have to be honest with what's going on. And you know what? When you ask a question and it's not exactly what you want to hear, maybe it's something you need to hear. And I think that's kind of where you got to have a learning and growth mindset. And sometimes growth is painful. That's why they call it growing pains.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. That's really good advice. Was there a player on those teams specifically that made the greatest impact on you?
Oh, Goldie again. I mean, as far as making an impact on me.
On the Blue Jays, on those Blue Jays teams, was there a player, maybe a veteran, or maybe it wasn't even a veteran, that made an impact on you?
It was really in Milwaukee.
Really? Okay.
And that was kind of the name of the grocery store that we used with
Wegman.
Bill Wegman.
Really?
He was a pitcher. Kevin Seitzer. Those guys were just solid believers.
Kevin was the hitting coach with the Braves for years, right?
For years.
Yeah.
And he was third base at Milwaukee Brewers. I left Toronto and grew up, was in faith as a believer, but somewhere as in pro ball, I just slowly kind of got away from my faith. And even after winning 2 straight World Series, I looked real happy on the outside and miserable on the inside. And I remember praying that winter after the second World Series. It was in 1993. I said, Lord, if it means me never playing baseball again, I'm going to serve you the rest of my life. And man, I got a phone call about 10 days later from the Blue Jays saying we released you. And I was like, okay, God, I really didn't mean. But you know what? That's when the Brewers claimed me off waivers. I would have had no idea that the Brewers and the Christian players that was on that team, Cal Eldred, Kevin Seitzer, Bill Wegman, all these solid believers, and the general manager, Sal Bando, one of the coaches is Chris Bando. I mean, I went from the Toronto Blue Jays doing something that the world looks as the most important thing in life to going to the Milwaukee Brewers, where my life was changed, which was really the most important thing in my life.
Wow. That's pretty powerful, actually. You still have close relationship with a lot of those guys?
Oh yeah, Cal. Talked to Cal. Our families are close. Kevin, not as much, but I talk to him every time we see it.
Sure, I see you run to each other.
So
yeah.
There's a special bond.
That's amazing. On some of those teams, because obviously it's not just the Blue Jays where you guys had a lot of success as a player. You were the Dodgers. Your years with the Dodgers, incredible success, over 100 wins. Making it to 2 World Series. Do you think there's a common thread for coaches of winning teams? Is there something specifically, and it could be something maybe we've already talked about, but is there something specifically that coaches that have successful teams do? Do they do something that's kind of universal across the board that you've seen on all the success you've had on the field, whether it be a player or as a coach?
If I had to just put it all down to one word, it would probably be discipline. And I know that kind of sounds weird, but it just covers so many broad areas. And I would say from a hitting standpoint, discipline as a hitter is probably one of your most key ingredients to being successful. I think that, maintaining discipline in a team is very important. And we had those in those really good teams. I won 3 championships in the minor leagues. One as a player, 2 as a manager. We won back-to-back when I was managing AA. And Goldie would remind me all the time, and Pollock and Ad Neaton, these guys, how hard I went. I demanded something. I was trying to drive something out of them that was bigger than them and bigger than just an individual, the team and stuff. But again, they come down to discipline. And so I think, with the Toronto Blue Jays, that team should owe gas into discipline. Great players. You got to have great players, but a lot of teams got great players, right?
Yeah.
And there's got to be a cohesiveness. But the discipline is like, hey, we're all in it to do this. There's the part of that discipline.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's organically happens. Sometimes it's it's made to happen. It's literally a process of what you're trying to make happen. And so if I had to just kind of that one thing, that the discipline,
And you think that coaches can create that, have the ability to create that?
Yes, I do.
You do. Mm-hmm. Through, I guess, in what way? Would you be able to say? Obviously,
well, the term comes from discipleship,
right? It does,
right? So it should be coming from love.
Yeah.
So that discipline out of love becomes something that you want to do. But discipline out of hate is something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And players recognize it, right? I knew when coaches didn't care, man. I knew. They were just there for whatever reason, to get their contract or to get whatever it was. But that discipline and love, when I can call somebody out because they know I care, that's real.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I wanted to be as a coach. And sometimes it doesn't feel as good as you would want it to.
Yeah, I imagine. It kind of goes back to that relationship thing that we were talking about earlier. On the flip side of that, if you could pinpoint something that would, cause a team to be unsuccessful, would it be lack of discipline, or would it be something else from a coach's perspective? Like what does a coach do in teams that aren't successful? Is there a common thread of what coaches are doing?
Man, literally it goes.
Would it just be the opposites we're talking about, right?
Really, it is. It's total. It's like they're just able to do and go
whatever they want.
They're the individual. They're only thinking about themselves. Think about that, man. When you got those cancers types players on your team, and I hate to use that word because it's cancer is a big part of our family, but it's something that we've described a long time. It's just become selfishness.
Yeah.
It is a very selfish game. I mean, it is an individual's game, but trying to get a bunch of individuals to come into one, that's discipline.
Yeah.
And the selfishness is just undisciplined.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I got to ask you too, because this is something that it's been years, and I'm sure, I know it was a big thing at the time, but those Dodgers, I don't know if it was would have been 18.
17.
17. Rich Hill.
Astros?
No, that Rich Hill. The Rich Hill game. Do you remember this? The Rich Hill was throwing 6 innings. I don't know if it was perfect game. It might have been actually perfect or no hit, I think, against the Red Sox. I think it was game 4 against the Red Sox in the World Series. Yeah, so 18 probably, right? 2018, right?
18.
And goes out in the 7th. Maybe walked a guy, got out. I can't remember exactly how it was, but he was pulled in that. And then you guys went on to lose that game. And I remember it being a big thing because all the media was up in arms over it as far as going.
Third time through?
Well, yeah, like, just kind of like, and or just like, why did they pull him? He was only at like 90 pitches. He was dealing. He only gave up like one. He was still at like, I think maybe a one hitter, or I can't remember exactly all the details, but I remember people being pretty fired up about it. And it kind of, it ended up creating this old school versus new school type of thing of like, not letting pitchers go riding them, longer instead of having just, hey, this is our 7th inning guy, 8th inning guy, 9th inning guy. Now it is a lot now, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that situation and kind of what the chaos that probably came after that? Because that was obviously a series changing kind of move. And, listen, guys, you never know until it was hindsight's 2020, right? So, I mean, he could have stayed in and still given up the game. But do you kind of know why you guys decided to make that switch, or Dave made that switch at that time?
I remember, I'm going to say this because Kirk Gibson used to make this comment all the time because of having to deal with the media after the game. He would ask him, I want you to just timestamp what you would do in this situation, knowing everything that we know. So kind of going back to that, I know with Rich, he had that third time through the lineup, getting to a certain amount of pitches, things would just go south.
Yeah.
So that is a tough, and there's no crystal ball to kind of know which way is the right way. And I think you're in that manager's seat, even as I'm watching the game, because sometimes I would question things that would happen, with Ollie or whatever manager.
Anyway,
not to second guess, to kind of go, what made this decision? And I think a lot of times they can't answer that sometimes in the media. I just had a feel of this.
A gut.
So, a lot of times a good answer is like, here's the numbers, this is what happens. And so that's where numbers sometimes kind of get you away from the field. Because even when I was Dave Robertson, we was going to pinch hit, and we had a lineup of guys, lefty, righty. We had really good lefty hitters that hit righties like Kike, who hit lefties really well, and sometimes the numbers did not always go in favor of what we needed to do because that certain player felt terrible. It didn't matter if a little leaguer was out there. He was not going to hit anybody at that time. So it's like, take your shot this way. So you can't always answer that.
Would you guys adjust? So, if that's the case, would you guys adjust how the strategy based on that? Like if a player is feeling like it, or if you feel like the player is feeling that way, even if he's not outright saying it to you, or you have a sense, you guys know these players.
Let's just say that it was Jock. It was Jock, in the lineup against a righty. A lefty comes in, and it's early in the game in the 6th inning, and Jock's a better outfielder, say, than Kike. I'm just using this as an example.
Sure.
But lefty comes in, and Kike's feeling terrible, but Jock's a better defender, and the game's tight. So you let Jock kind of take the AB. Now, if Kike was feeling great, there's runners on base. So to me, there's too many variables.
So many
that you have to look at just to kind of make that one decision.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why Gibby would say, "Put a timestamp on it. What would you do?"
Right. That's good. I've always, and again, it's so easy to second guess. It's so easy to second guess after the fact,
And it's fun doing it.
Of course, media loves doing it. Those years with the Dodgers too, you had, it seemed like a pretty special relationship with Puig. The media was talking about media. They're always like, when he hits the home run, come over, give you a kiss on the cheek or whatever it may be. What was that relationship like for you?
Okay, so I came over in 2016. Okay, so didn't know any of the Dodgers. Matter of fact, we had a brawl with them the year before, a big brawl.
Really?
JT, what was his name? Not JT. JP Howell. JP Howell, left-handed pitcher, tried to throw me over into the camera well. And so from now on, brawls, I got my head on a swivel, looking for players. But anyway, so I go to, go there in 2016, and, with Puig, me and him kind of hit it right off. I said, you know what? I'm going to say some things, and we're going to talk about things, but I want you to have. I give you permission to say whatever you need to, whether I like it or not. I want the same permission. So there were sometimes players really did not like what stuff that he would say to me. Say, hey man, we got this related. He can say whatever he wants. He didn't like it, So kind of going back now to spring training, getting to know him. Going to Dave and Buster's with my family when he loved to play video games and stuff like that. And so the goal that year was he's never hit 20 homers. So here's this big, strong guy, great player, should be an MVP, never hit 20 homers. The goal was to hit 20 homers. Well, I just did this one drill with him, just a front hip drill, which would help him elevate the ball, but keep his same swing path, and try to help him organically without trying to do that. So he hit his 20th homer, I think July or somewhere in July. And the reason that kiss started because he was so happy that he had that, that he just, I've never been kissed before by a player in my, on a field. That was kind of really weird, awkward, but he was so happy, so excited. He gave me that kiss. So the flip side of that, now he's very superstitious. So now each time he hit a homer, he's going to come give me a kiss. Well, we're in St. Louis and we're playing the Cardinals. He hits 3 homers. Okay, so he comes in, he gives me a kiss. I'm just ready for it now. Okay, kiss right here, kiss right here, and the third one, he's going to give me a kiss right in the little that ain't happening. So that's how that all started. It was just kind of just something that just happened. It was organically, and we just made fun, had fun with it.
Now he came over. Were you both at Cincinnati at the same time as well?
Yeah.
Oh, that's got to be kind of neat.
Yeah.
That was neat. What happened with Puig?
There was some. I don't know exactly what happened. So I really don't want to say anything because I don't know what happened. But he's playing in Korea. He texted me the other day. He's in Korea and he's going to be playing there. And
so you guys still stay in touch a little bit?
Yeah, we still stay in touch a little bit. So
that's really cool. Oh my gosh! Yeah, I just remember seeing those clips there.
Yeah. I got a shirt at home. I guess somebody made shirts of it. Kids and little pins and stuff.
That's amazing. That's so cool. Can you give me a little? I know we're shifting gears a little bit here, but could you give me a little bit? We've talked about God a little bit already, and obviously, without even trying to talk about it, it comes out in your conversation because it's who you are, right? And as a believer, would you mind sharing with me your testimony of how you became, a Christian, how you became your relationship with Christ? Kind of share that with me a little bit.
Yeah, I would go to church as a young boy. With my grandmother and stuff. I'd never been to church with my dad when I was young, and I'll give you the story here in just a second. But for some reason, I had a desire to go, whether it was the youth camps or stuff like that. And I remember I was 14 years old, and my goal, in dream, I told you at 9, 10 years old was to be a Major League Baseball player. And I remember at 14, it's really when I made a decision. I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player. I decided then I'm going to train, work. I didn't know how to work out, didn't know what workout was. Run, I was going to be in the best shape. And so I went out for my freshman team and didn't make it. And I was like, man, here I want to be a Major League Baseball player, and I can't even make my freshman baseball team. Well, kind of fast forward to the next year, I go out for the sophomore team, and I made it. And me and one other sophomore made it. I played one at bat. I got one at bat that season, and it was against the rival team, and we must have been getting blown out somehow or something. But anyway, I got an AB, and I popped up to the catcher that was my only AB. And so, I'm 60 years old now, and I can't remember not one other hit. I cannot remember a hit in high school. Not one, but I remember that out. So that sophomore year, I went to this revival. Our church was having a revival. And I remember this pastor, he was talking a lot about heaven and hell. And the way he described it, I knew where I did not want to go. And so when the pastor gave the invitation, if you want to come and know and put your life in Christ's hand, as a believer and follower of Jesus Christ, come up here and we'll pray with you. And I wanted to go so bad, but man, I didn't. I sat there in my seat and I said, I'm not going up there in front of all these people. Well, the next night I had a urge to go back, and I asked my dad. I'd never been. I was 15. I'd never been to church with my dad. And that preacher preaching again about heaven and hell, and when he said, you want to come down and get to know Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, come down and I prayed with. So, man, I walked down. Man, I had tears in my eyes like I am now. I was so happy about the decision that I made. But I was looking out there. I wanted my father out there with me. I wanted him up there with me. And as I relate to that now, that's how our Father is. He just wants us up there with him. And, my dad passed away a few years ago in COVID. And I was able to witness to my dad and share Jesus with my dad. But my dad was a tough guy. He was, I never heard him say, I love you until the day on his deathbed. He was dying, and he told me he loved me. But, as I think back in that decision I made as a 15-year-old boy, and through all this time, man, there's been some ups and downs and growing and in my faith. But you know what? God just wants us up there with him. He sent his son here down so we can come up. And, I think about that a lot. It's like that little church just wanted my dad up there with me.
So that's at 15 years old. When your dad saw you go up there, what was his reaction? What was the ride home from that moment?
It was just quiet. You wouldn't even talk about it a whole lot after that. It was like years later, after I got into pro ball and everything and leaving the Toronto Blue Jays and getting there with the Milwaukee Brewers, is when, because my mom and dad divorced, and there was a time that I didn't even spend time with my dad. It was like I didn't want to even be around him, and I wasn't even forgiving him. And I was like, I was really convicted in my life. It's like, this is what all Christ has forgiven me for. You can't forgive your own dad. So kind of goes back to that scripture. It's like, how many times you should forgive? 70 times 7. Well, I don't know if that number is really right, but I think it's just always forgive.
Yeah.
And I forgave my dad. And what that did, that freed me. It wasn't even about freeing him. It freed me up. So that was, the rest of those years of my life, just kind of having a relationship with him, all because I could give up my right for being right. You know what?
Yeah.
It's okay that you're right, and it's okay that we all make mistakes. But you know what? If Christ can forgive us for all what we've done and what we're going to do, then I think I need to have that same kind of forgiveness in my own life.
Was there ever a time, so 15, you said, you've been a Christian a long time. Was there ever a time during that span where you really, you doubted Christ, or, basically doubted or doubted your faith, or had, your faith was failing? Was there a moment in time when that happened?
Well, I think that doubt always slips in different ways. I was so angry when my wife got cancer. I remember I was on a bus. I was managing in AA, and my wife just went to do a normal mammogram. And the test results come back, waiting on the test results to go back. And we was on a bus from Montgomery to Jacksonville, Florida, about midway down that trip in August of 2012 is when she called. And she said she had cancer. And, man, I can't tell you. I watched my wife go through surgery, double mastectomy. And when she came home, it was like she was like in a mummy, and she was in so much pain. And this kind of goes back to Cal Eldred. His wife come down to stay with us to help for a week. And my wife was in so much pain. And the pain medicine just wouldn't help. The only thing that would stop the pain is us to start praying. It was amazing that each time that we would just pray, the pain would cease. And so before all that, you asked me about, after I died, I was so mad. I was like, God, I just want you to let me have it. Take this from her and give it to me. And I think that, probably as a husband, as a dad or whatever, that's just kind of maybe normal for us to kind of want to take it on. But it's been 12 years now, and she's doing really good. It's still, the cancer word never goes away. She did write a book. It's called Unexpected Hope. And so, we've helped a lot of women through our foundation through it. So there was something that's really good that's come out of it. But as you can see now, even I'm emotionally, it's the emotional part of it will never go away because, early in my career, before I got to the big leagues, I got these 8 screws and a pin in this ankle. So my ankle literally was lower foot was at a 90-degree angle. So I know what excruciating pain feels like. I watched my wife in excruciating pain, but I know now that pain literally from injury and emotional pain is the same. One's not greater than the other. So, the emotional pain that people are going through, I got to experience something that I would never really know. I always thought I was a compassionate person, but going through this has made me more compassionate. And I actually think it made me a better coach because, applying that compassion, because whether it's the pain of going 0 for 4 or 0 for 20, that's, if that's the only pain that you've experienced at this point, that's the toughest pain that you've had,
Sure,
right? So pain comes in a lot of different ways and different levels. So I think it's really kind of helped me as a coach.
Was there a moment when you were going through that time that where you went from angry and God just kind of was able to help you with that anger? Was there like a specific time where that just happened over time, gradually through prayer, through just in the Word, and just probably with your wife? I can't imagine the type of how you guys probably got much closer through that time. I would imagine. As difficult as it was there a moment where you feel like that you were able to get over that anger?
Well, I think it's natural for us to doubt or know.
For sure.
Emotion, anger's an emotion, just like happiness and everything else. And I think probably the biggest part of that was my wife and how, literally she could hardly hold up her arm, and she was just journaling. And she would be in tears sometimes writing in her journal. And so much pain. But I kept telling her the stuff that she was writing. I was like, this is unbelievable. This is profound. I said, this is going to be a book. No, this ain't going to be a book. Well, she did turn it into a book, but it was her book is literally a journey and journal of everything that she kind of went through. So what really helped me was her. It's amazing.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. What was the name of that book again?
Unexpected Hope.
Unexpected Hope. Well, we'll definitely we'll put that in the link for sure. That'll be my next purchase for sure. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Thanks for making me choke
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. But I think and I don't have to tell you this, but being vulnerable, there are a lot of people that are going through, and I know you guys have probably met so many through your journey. You've probably met a ton of people going through the same thing. And I think sharing that and then sharing how you were able to make it through. And there's really only one way, and it's through Christ.
Well, it is. And so I wear this ring. I had this ring for 12 years. Well, I'll say 11 years, because that's about year 1, because my wife, she told me, she goes, I think I'm losing my faith. And I said, no, you can't lose your faith. You might be losing a little bit of hope. So it made me go study hope. I looked at hope, and hope in the Bible's like about 74, 77 times. Different versions have a little bit more time, but the word hope in the New Testament is the word elpis, E-L-P-I-S. So we use hope like in doubt. Man, I hope I get this test. Oh, I hope I make this flight. Oh, I hope I get this job. Really, there's doubt. Well, elpis has nothing to do with doubt. Elpis is certainty of things to come. And so when I got as deep as I thought possibly could, and when I studied in hope, and when I found the bottom of hope, it was literally a person. The person of hope is Christ. And when we don't have Christ, we don't have hope. So, through all that, we wear these rings. And so when I see someone going through struggles, I always take off this ring, or I have rings in my backpack, and, I'll give them out at certain times to people that's going through different stuff, just to actually literally give some hope.
That's amazing.
So,
wow. Man, I feel like I don't really want to talk about much after that. I think that's a good way to end it. Could you kind of give the people that are listening, maybe give them a final, I don't know, like a challenge, or, it could be spiritual, it could be baseball wise, it could be whatever you feel, or a final word of advice. Maybe someone's going through something like that, and you kind of already just talked about it, the hope of Christ. But kind of give them just kind of a final word, as we end the podcast.
I think because maybe if a lot of people are dads that are watching this, it's maybe that's just sports and stuff, so they're probably getting to watch their kids, and I think that one thing that I would challenge them is just enjoy watching them play. They're gonna struggle. They're gonna, learn how to turn off the coach and just be a dad, and just be there and watch them. I was in the big leagues and still was excited when my dad would come watch me play. So I have to challenge myself that I still got a son, 20, playing in college. Man, I love to go watch him play. So I don't get to watch him a whole lot. And those times is going to go by really quick. So if you got your kids out there and they're playing sports, your boy, your girl, whoever it is, man, just enjoy watching them play, because believe me, even when they think and say as a teenager they don't like you out there or whatever, that they do. And they're glad you're out there.
That's awesome. That's perfect. Well, Turner, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate you coming, and thank you if you made it to the end. Thank you for watching, and if you would just like and subscribe, we'd appreciate it, and to kind of stay up to date on some of the content that we're creating. And until next time, God bless. Thank you so much for watching this episode of our podcast. And if you're looking to watch more content from this guest, feel free to click right here. And if you want to watch another one of our episodes, click right here.